Hello students, today we are starting with the second part of the pharmacoepidemiology studies, in which we will today study about various methods which are used to conduct epidemiological studies. Now let us understand first that what is the purpose of the descriptive epidemiology. One of the very important purpose of conducting epidemiological studies is we need to generate a hypothesis regarding a particular problem. Then it also permits the evaluation of what are the current trends in the health and disease, and it helps to compare those trends among the various countries, even within the countries' subgroups. It also provides us some basic idea for planning for the industries or to make certain provisions, or if you want to evaluate the health services which are provided to the community, whether they are efficiently working or there are any loopholes, drawbacks. So that data can be collected with epidemiological studies. Even the epidemiological studies can be used to identify which problem needs to be studied by analytical methods, and therefore it can suggest you the area of research or the area that may be fruitful for the further investigation. Now various methods, the first method include case reports. When we talk about a case report, it is actually a very simplest form of the study. It is an observational study which includes our daily routine, where in daily routine practitioners in medical field can, if they notice any emergence of any outcome due to the drug exposure, then they can report that outcome with a proper reporting system, or they can publish it into the medical or the pharmacy journals, so that can create a signal and will alert the other people that there is a possibility of a causal association. That means there is some adverse event associated with a particular drug. Not necessarily every time it has to be adverse event. We will go through the examples and we will come to know. Next, one of such a example of the case report that was by McBride, which has actually generated a signal and confirmed that a drug can produce certain fetal abnormalities. And therefore that report was actually responsible for the creation of the teratology field in the study of the drugs, in the drug studies. Another example is of the, that's what I was telling you, that not necessarily it has to be always the adverse effect. It can be a secondary effect of the drug which can also be identified, and that may lead to the repurposing of the drug. So Zeta-Costa, it presented a case report of a patient who had treated with minoxidil, and it discovered that after taking minoxidil there was a hair growth, and then subsequently a topical formulation of the minoxidil was developed by taking advantage of that report or the case report. So case report studies will give you either a new indication or adverse event. So in short, it will create a signal to establish a causal effect relationship. Then comes the case series. Case series is actually a set of sequential case reports which are identified either by exposure or they can be identified by outcome. Such as there may be the first 100 patients if treated with a drug, or there are first 100 cases of a particular outcome seen by observed by the practitioner. So it is somewhat resembling to that of the open trial of the drug, but it doesn't have any, you can say that it's an open trial but doesn't have any formal protocol to conduct the trial. These actually case series studies, when they are conducted, they are usually conducted within a very short time, and there are experience of a group of patients with similar diagnosis if they are reporting that outcome, or they enlarges our knowledge of the use of a drug and what are going to be their consequences. They also help us to confirm the ADRs or sometimes the new indications, and therefore they provide a more inner insight to the nature of the outcome and what can be the related factors responsible for that outcome. For example, the Krishnamurthy and the King reported on the adverse effect which is associated with the use of olanzapine in 5 children with a severe behavioral problem like attention deficient hyperactivity disorder. And the adverse effect which was reported was a weight gain in 3 to 5 children, sedation in 2 out of 5 children, and akathisia in the 2 to 5 children. So, such reports have provided that there are certain outcomes on treatment to the attention Lanza 2, and that gives a warning to the entire world. So what are the advantages of the case series? That they will help us to generate a hypothesis. Very important case series is that sometimes there is maybe a rare disease with few established risk factors, so it can be informative for such type of the diseases. Yes, it is usually of a short duration because it is observed and reported. Disadvantages, it cannot study the cause and the effect relationship, and it cannot assess how frequently it can occur. A disease frequency cannot be established with the help of a case series. Then we come to the next, that is a cross-sectional studies. It is also termed as an epidemiological study, or it is also termed as a prevalence study, which actually describes the data collected on group of subjects at particular time or at one time, rather than observing the people over a prolonged period of the time. That is, it's a survey of exposure and disease at a single time point. Here both are evaluated, both that means exposure as well as the outcome variables are evaluated at that particular point of the time. And it is a more sophisticated descriptive study, and this generally carried out to answer the question that what is currently happening. It will not give you an idea about what may happen in the future, but it will give you an idea about what is currently happening with your drug. Now these are usually done through survey studies or certain chart reviews or certain database analysis. So this gives you a state of affairs at that particular time when you are performing that epidemiological study. And it also estimates that how much prevalence is there of utilization and possibility is there for the outcome. And therefore such type of the information is always useful for formulary management or for development of certain policies. Such type of the cross-sectional studies are also used to compare the drugs which are used in 2 different countries, or maybe between the 2 states within the country, and if there is a large difference occurring between the results, then that reasons for those differences should be immediately investigated and the policies need to be examined to determine whether outcomes and the cost also differ and whether any rectification or the changes need to be made in that. Now, example of the cross-sectional study was actually published by Dua and his colleagues, who examined that antibiotics used in pharmacies, especially this was a study conducted in Nagpur, but they found that there was inappropriate prescriptions by the physicians and there was inappropriate sale of the antibiotic by the pharmacists. Without this prescription also the antibiotics were given, and so here the problem was identified that there needs to be some remedial action which needs to be taken so that such type of the prescriptions of antibiotic will not be dispensed. So here this study has helped to identify the problem area, and therefore a remedial action can be directed or can be initiated. So that is an outcome of this cross-sectional studies. So what are the advantages? This is best for determining the prevalence, the status, very quick and comparatively less expensive. Disadvantage, you get only outcome of that particular time spot, time leading to sometimes snapshot at a time leading to a misinformation, or sometimes response rate may be comparative because we are restricting only to a short period. Response rate may be low with results not representative of the entire population. So these are some of the disadvantages of the cross-sectional studies. Then we are coming to the correlation studies. A study comparing either incidences or a prevalence of one event against the another event on a global scale. It measures that represent characteristics of entire population are used to describe the disease in relation to some factors of the interest, such as the age of the patient, calendar time, what is the type of the food consumed, any drug other than that used, and what are the health services, utilization of the health services. So there is a correlates involved. Advantages is that it compares the entire event among the nation, but it doesn't compare individuals. So this may sometimes the outcomes which are coming out of these studies are over general, they are not specific. Then there is another study which you can term as a trend analysis. Not mentioned over here, but I want to discuss with you. Trend analysis actually involves where you plot the data over a particular period of the time. Where you interpret the plot, you find out what are the patterns which are coming out of that, and according to the patterns, you come to a particular conclusion. For example, if there is any new pharmacy law imposed or is passed, or any drug policy is implemented, then we can actually plot a graph of a usage of a drug over the time, and then you can compare that what was the drug usage before launching the policy and after putting up the policy. And if you find there is any shift in the trend line, that suggests that the law or the policy which was implemented had brought certain change or has an impact over the utilization of the drug. So this is, you are developing a trend, you are comparing a trend line before after the action has been taken. When there are two separate sets of the data, if they need to be displayed together, and we are showing a consistent pattern, we can refer it to an ecological correlation. Like suppose we plot the use of antibiotic over a particular period of the time, and you find the number of the resistant strains of the bacteria which have developed over that particular same period of the time. Then you can establish the relationship that with the ecological correlates. Now, what are the different advantages of the trend analysis is that you can visualize the dynamics of the data. Even that trend, you can find out a trend suggests that events may be linked to certain correlates. There may be sometimes, but the observer, whoever is conducting this trend analysis, he has to be aware that if there are two events which are occurring together or in a pattern suggesting that one may have influence over the other, that cannot be proof of the causation. It remains always a matter of the speculation, and therefore you cannot just rely on the trend analysis. You have to perform some other analysis to come to a definite conclusion. Now we are coming to certain analytical studies, where in these analytical, but before we move on to the analytical studies, again I would like to get your attention to the other type of the studies which are carried out are the database studies. Now, database studies are where you need a data, all the requisite data for conducting the epidemiological research. Like you need the information of a patient, diagnosis, drugs and their outcomes. And then with the appropriate linkages and databases which are versatile, you can perform this type of analysis. Where researchers can also conduct any type of observational studies, like cohort studies, where the databases can contain data from literally millions of the patients. And because there is a large amount of the data, the estimates which will be coming out of this study will be reasonably accurate about especially adverse drug reaction, or how much of the effectiveness of a drug, or a comparative outcomes within the patient, such as if you are comparing what is the mortality rate or what is the cost of the care involved, then the comparison between the two drugs will be more definite. But the disadvantage of the database studies are that if you don't have a sufficient data, if there are few databases are linked, or there is less data, then you cannot come to the final conclusion. Or there may be sometimes a misleading data in your database or miscoded data that will create an error. Then you have to even determine whether you are going to restrict yourself only to the patient records, charts, or electronic data, or which type of the data you are going to look for. Sometimes there may be a lack of the important information because of any reason. There may be a confidentiality, the patient doesn't want to disclose the data, so then that becomes the lack of the information. Yes, for example, if you see the drug insurance database, it will give you a great deal of information, but it will seldomly give you, or there won't be much information about the diagnosis or the characteristics of the patient. So in such cases, there will be a problem in that database. That because when you go to the insurance data, there will be some prescriptions which are filled, but not necessarily all the prescriptions were consumed by the patient. So then that may create an error. So there are certain limitations of the database studies. Now we are moving to the analytical studies. In analytical studies, there can be two basic design, one case control or a retrospective study, and another is a cohort study or a prospective study. What is important when you are doing for analytical study? There must be a comparison group. That's very important. NC, no control, there won't be no conclusion. So this is the design of a case control study, whether there is a population divided into two. One, that there are people with the disease, another people without the disease. With the disease, exposed to your drug, not exposed to your drug. Without the disease, exposed, not exposed. Over a particular period of the time. Advantages, now when we talk about these case control studies, the case control study is actually a mirror image of the cohort study. Here we start by assembling a group of the patient having a particular outcome which is of our interest, and then we match them on important variables such as age, sex, severity of the disease with a similar group of the individual which do not have any outcome or adverse drug reaction, which we term as a control. So here the matching becomes important because we are not able to randomize the patients into group as they are done in the randomized control trial, and then we determine whether the patient has been exposed to the drug in question, and then we compare the groups. So case control studies will be done only when there are comparatively rare outcomes, and only if exposure to the drug is not too uncommon. So for a rare outcome and rare exposure, there may be no effective model for examining the issue. Such may be sometimes a case with the orphan drugs which are rarely used, causing some unusual event. So in such cases, the best approach will be then that case will be the case report and then apply our clinical judgment. If you look at the advantages of the case control study, we can assess the rare outcomes and multiple exposures on single outcome. It is easy to carry, it is rapid and comparatively less expensive, comparatively needs few subjects. It can assist one in studying the different etiological factors, and very importantly, it doesn't need ethical clearance, and there is not much risk involved because you are considering the people who are already suffering from disease and exposed to that particular drug, so not much risk is involved. Another is that you can test your hypotheses. Now, one of the example of the case control study is that there were Chan and co-workers who actually examined the cases of admission to the hospital due to the bleeding hemorrhage in the GI, and they matched them with the admission for other reasons. Now here they compared the rates of how much exposure was there to the NSAID to those patients who were not exposed. So they were not exposed to NSAID act as a control. And also in the people who had taken ulcer healing drug like paracetamol. So odds ratios were 14 for non-exposed control, 12.5 for other ulcer drugs, and 2.5 for paracetamol. And all of them were statistically significant. And that's why I told you this example, that there is not much risk involved to the subject where they already are there on the medication. Yeah, sometimes there may be a bias, there may be you need to select an appropriate control, that's very important, and that sometimes becomes difficult. It may be difficult to distinguish between the cause of the disease and the factor which is associated with it, becomes very difficult. So these are certain challenges, or you can say disadvantages. Now we come to the cohort study. The cohort study is one study in which the patients are entered according to the status of their exposure. Here we assemble a group of the patients who are exposed to a drug and a non-exposed comparison group similar to them in all other important aspects. There are two groups, then they are followed through the time, and their outcomes are observed and recorded. And when your trial gets completed, the rates are compared between the two groups, and then your hypothesis gets tested. So cohort is nothing but a group of people who have something in common, and they remain therefore the part of that group over extended period of the time. So there is a group of the people exposed to suspected, the one which are expecting, the suspected etiological agent, are compared with a match control who have not been similarly exposed, and the subject selected on the basis of exposure, that is what, for example, you are looking for effect of cigarette smoking, then that will be the etiological factor, and then you follow up over a period of the time to compare the outcome. Also a longitudinal study or the prospective study is also possible in these cases. Yeah, variant is the historic cohort study, which is the same in all respects, except that the data is collected sometimes retrospectively from the patient chart and database rather than you recording the data. Because the patients are identified, then they are grouped according to the exposure status. So because they are identified and grouped, the data is grouped, it becomes a cohort study. However, since the data is collected after the fact, it will be termed as a historic cohort study rather than prospective cohort study. Thus, the cohort study has a lot of flexibility in that data may be collected from variety of the sources. Either you can collect it directly from the patient, or you can go for indirect sources like patient chart or the computerized data. So the cohort study is used in those situations where outcome is not rare. If exposure to the drug is rare, then the sample size must be increased, but the cohort study model is still valid in those situations. And what is the advantage the cohort study has is that it is able to actually measure what is the outcome incidence. Effectiveness data can be collected. With one study, many different outcomes to single exposure may be examined. Here I have given the example, like here you can see that this is a very classical design of a cohort study. These are the people without the disease, some exposed, some not exposed. After exposure, either they are disease or there is no disease, and not exposed are also either disease or no disease. So you can say, see exactly this is a mirror image of what we discussed in the case control study. There is no bias. The risk can be calculated because the incidences can be calculated. It is effective for studying even the rare exposures. It allows the study of a natural history of the disease. It assists in determining the relationship between the various etiological factors and the disease. That's the biggest advantage of the cohort study. No doubt it's carried out for a longer period of the time, so long time is involved, and when the time increases, the expenses increases, obviously the number of subjects included increase, and there could be sometimes change in the standard methods or diagnostic criteria. But although they are producing a large amount of the information, useful information, the disadvantage are these, that there is a long time, lot of expenses involved, lot of subjects are involved, there may be sometimes modifications. Even the very important one disadvantage is that there may be sometimes dropouts of the candidates which are enrolled to the pharmacoepidemiological studies, and in that case the follow-up becomes very, very difficult. So even if there is a large number, there may not be sufficient data because the follow-ups are not there, data is not available. And most of the time they are observational studies. So being observational studies, we cannot truly establish the causation, and we cannot guarantee that all of the co-founders have been ruled out. So even the cohort has their own disadvantages. Now there are experimental studies, where the subject in which one group is deliberately subjected to an experience compared with a control group which has not experienced a similar event. The gold standard in medicine because it proves causality, and it can be either controlled or uncontrolled. Uncontrolled experimental studies, where intervention is not compared with control, it is just performed to confirm that there is some difference after doing some intervention in the management of the patient or in the drug therapy. Controlled experimental studies, in this study the drug or a procedure is compared to another drug, to another procedure, or to the placebo, or to the previously accepted therapy. The aim is to prove the difference due to the intervention, change in the therapy. Control could be a blind trial, single or double. Methods can be a concurrent or a parallel, randomized or non-randomized. Or there can be sometimes self-control or crossover designs may be involved, or there may be external control. A study population can involve clinical trials, you can perform some field trials, or you can perform certain community trials. In experimental studies, the advantages is obviously the best study. It proves the causality, gold standard for other design, it establishes with comparatively least bias, and interventions to establish the efficacy of the procedure, they are best. Great expense, long duration, unproven facts adopted by community can hinder sometimes the acceptance of the study results. Then there are drug utilization studies. These aim to evaluate the factors related to the prescription, dispensing, administering and taking of the medication, and what are the associated events. They can be either beneficial or adverse. In early 1960s, the interest in drug utilization studies have increased first with market-only purposes, and then for evaluating what is the quality of a medical prescription and comparing then the patterns of use of a specific drug. Because of the increasing importance of the drug utilization study as a investigational resource in epidemiology, it has been bridging it with other health-related areas such as public health, pharmacovigilance, economics, and so on. And therefore, the utilization research has now become an essential part of the epidemiology because it will describe the extent and the nature and will determine and will help to investigate the determinants of the drug exposure. If you can say in common, the distinction between these two terms has become less sharp, and nowadays they are more commonly used as interchangeably, drug utilization and pharmacoepidemiology. They may provide sometimes the insights into the various aspects like what is the pattern of the use, extent and profiles of the drug use, what are the trends in the utilization of the drug, and what are the trends in the cost over the time. They can also give us an idea about the quality of a use, where the audits comparing actual use to national, regional prescription guidelines or local drug formularies. Quality indices of the drug use may include the choice of the drug, compliance to the recommended assortment or drug cost, compliance to the budgetary recommendation, drug dosage, awareness of inter-individual variation in the dose requirement or the adjustment of the dose according to the age, drug interaction awareness, ADR awareness, then proportion of the patient who are being aware or those who are unaware of the cost-benefit ratio of the treatment. Even it will help to determine, find out the determinants of the use. There are many determinants which affect the use of the drug. User characters, for example, socio-demographic parameters, attitude towards the drug, what are the characteristics of the prescriber, what is his specialty, education, what are the different factors influencing their decision in prescribing that product. Even it helps to find out what is the influence of drug characteristic, what are the therapeutic benefits a patient is getting, is it really affordable to the patient. Then outcomes of the use, health outcomes, whether he is really getting benefited or what is the ratio of benefit to the adverse effects, and what are the economic consequences of it. So this is all about the utilization, drug utilization studies. Now we are going to see about what are the various role of the epidemiology in various sectors. Epidemiological study play a very important role in the government agencies and healthcare plan because they use epidemiological studies to learn how drug products are used in real world. They provide access to drug in quality manner at affordable cost and to a variety of population. They also help to deal with coverage issues and if there are any educational interventions required like in TB programs and all that, awareness programs. Pharmaceutical industry, yes, they do conduct epidemiological studies to find out how your drug is prescribed or used, what are the different outcomes, are they positive, negative. For example, AstraZeneca to complement the safety data, rovastatin with other statin was done. Practitioners, yes, they also need epidemiological studies to make some decisions at both individual patient level or at a population level. Attorneys, yes, they use epidemiological studies as an evidence that a drug product did or did not cause any event. These are all legal matters where patients sued Pfizer for sildenafil and then their attorneys have used that data. Then international users, in 2008 approximately 1/3 of the reports were made to FDA, MedWatch, were reported by other countries outside the US. The countries have their own national database or national registries which provide much more opportunities for pharmacoepidemiological studies. There can be various sources of the data, adverse drug reaction, inpatient, outpatient data, laboratory tests, radiological test, prescriptions and OTC drugs which are taken. There are some special applications of the epidemiological studies that, as we already discussed about utilization, studies of drug utilization, evaluating and improving the prescriptions of the physicians, even the epidemiological studies of vaccine safeties can be carried out. Oral polio vaccine was associated with paralytic polio. Then epidemiological studies of medical devices, where to find out utilization and identification if there is any risk factor involved, or so risk of certain outcomes are there. Even the studies of drug-induced birth defects. So risk management can be from medication error, or there can be sometimes risk due to the quality or ADRs, or pharmaceutical reimbursement policies, whether or not the product should be reimbursed by the drug benefit policy, so to make such decisions. So this is all about the various pharmacoepidemiological studies and what are their different